Hello and welcome to another edition of the GetGrowing Weekly Work Session with GetOiling. I'm Coach Ashley, joined today by founder of GetOiling, Greg Hillwine. Hey, Greg.
Hey, everyone. We're really glad you're here today.
We are thrilled to have you here. And we also have the incredible Julie and Colin from our team. Hey, guys.
Hello.
How's it going, everyone?
We're thrilled to have you here today. Because we do this every week, we are here to help you grow your young living business. And today, specifically, we are going to be talking about making your website more beautiful. So for those of you who are at basic and higher, you have access to a feature in GetOiling called the Page Builder, where you could actually build web pages. So in GetOiling, your website, your system comes stocked with done for you, beautiful sharing websites that you can use to grow young living. If you want to highlight other aspects of you, or you want to customize how you're putting yourself out there into the world, the Page Builder is where you're going to want to go. And so today we're going to learn some basic design principles, and we're going to talk about how we can use Canva to improve our page designs. And we'll get into some of the specific features of the page builder, the section editors, things like that, so that you can really start to feel more fluent in how you are either modifying the pages that you have if you're using templates, or even starting from scratch. So welcome. Head over into the chat and let us know where you're coming in from. If you're watching us on Facebook, say hi in the comments. We're always excited to have you here. And we do meet every Thursday at noon Eastern. So I do have a few slides that I've prepared for you guys. So we're going to pop out a video, get into those slides, and then we will get into sharing screen and actually showing you how to get these pages done. So as promised, again, we're mastering page design with Canva and GetOiling. And today we'll go into page design basics, using the GetOiling page builder, using Canva to enhance your designs. And then, of course, as always, we have live help and Q&A. So if you are here looking for help or support, you have questions, add those to the Q&A right now so that we can work with you live here on the call. This is a live work session that is intended to help you move through any places that you might be stuck in the work that you're doing, so that you can go out there and do great work with your GetOiling site. So add those to the Q&A. If you are watching this from Facebook, or if you are on our YouTube channel seeing this as a replay, if you'd like to join us on one of these live calls, you can go to getoiling.com/weekly work session. And if you'd like help on a call just like this one, you can go to getoiling.com/website review. This isn't just for websites, but this is an opportunity for you to get a review of the work that you're doing, for you to have some, live video hand holding, whatever that might be. If you're just getting started with us, or you have a new project in mind, we can help you right here on a call just like this one. And you can actually set aside dedicated time. And if you'd like a hand getting things done, if you'd like for someone to maybe just do some of this stuff for you, getoiling.com/concierge. You'll learn more about the work that our team does and how they can help you. So let's talk a little bit first about the basics of designing a page. Essentially, you're going to want to follow similar good design principles as you would if you were designing, or decorating in your living room. For instance, when you think about your website, it is an expression of you where someone goes to spend time, right? So the visual experience needs to be something that reflects the emotion that you want to cultivate or evoke, the feeling, and it needs to, it needs to serve a particular purpose while also being nice to look at, right? So less is more is something to think about here. So, and this isn't to say that you can't use, lots of colors, for instance, but if you wanted to use lots of colors in a living room, for instance, then you might not have, the couch in fuchsia or magenta and the curtains right next to it in lime green, both solid colors, right? You're probably going to want to break things up, maybe with some white or a neutral, right? Otherwise, it's a visually overwhelming space. You can create that overwhelm and absolutely accomplish the opposite of what you want on your website if you create too much visual busyness. This is especially true about design elements and colors, but it can also be true about text, which we'll talk about just a little bit. We are getting more into the pretties today, and it's less about the copy, but I think it is very important to know that on most pages on your website, being more concise is going to serve you better, right? So people don't really love aesthetically a big old chunk of text right in the middle of a page. Now, the content, speaking of your copy, the actual substance of what you are saying on the page is 100% more important than the design. If you put well-formatted content onto your page, meaning there's, it's easy for the eye to visually move through the content, then you are accomplishing something more powerful than if you have the same copy and the visual design is overwhelming, right? So all of this is to say, if you're just getting started with design, err on the side of prioritizing the content and having it well formatted, and don't worry quite so much about the pretty stuff, right? And add that as you get better. Focus on content first, because each page on your site has a clear purpose. Now, if you don't know what that purpose is, and you feel like you're stuck on something, that might be the reason why. if you don't know what you want someone to do when they go to your page, the action that you want them to take, then you're designing a page maybe because you think you need it, but it's not going to do the thing that it needs to do because we aren't designing with intention. So be clear on what the intention is. And the way that you find out what that intention is, how do you set that intention, is to ask yourself, what is the action that I want a visitor to this page of my site to take? Right? Do I want them? Obviously, we want them to read content on the page, but what do we want them to do with it? Do we want them to reach out to you? Do we want them to go buy something? Do we want them to click and go to another page on your website or another section of your website where they're able to take a more targeted action, right? So be clear on what the primary action is. And we don't want to be suggesting too many actions on a page. Your homepage obviously is going to be a slightly different story because your homepage is sort of a directory of your site and your brand. But you still kind of want to make sure that we aren't overwhelming people. Just like if you walk into a room and there's, way too much stuff on the walls and there's so many colors and patterns and it's busy and it's disruptive to you, you're going to basically create that same environment for somebody on your website, which is not what you want if we aren't taking this stuff into account. All right, so with all of that said, let's get into it. Let's go check out the GetOiling page builder and talk about how we can start utilizing Canva to create some really pretty pages. So real quick, I'm having an issue here getting into this Jane account. All right, cool. I am in here now so I can share my screen. And as you guys are watching, feel free to ask questions, add those to the Q&A, and we're happy to chat. All right, so let's get into it here. You can find your page builder from right down here in create, like go to create web page, but it's also right here under pages in your website menu. If you have a basic plan with GetOiling, you have 10 web pages, which is a great place to start. And then, of course, as you move into the higher plans, you get a lot more pages. So I want to actually show you, we're going to go to create page, and let's somebody give me in the chat, what is our purpose? What kind of page do we want to create? Who would like to contribute that? And then from there, we will we'll design. So what page on the website? Okay, we've got an offer, so an offer page. So what would that be? a wellness and wealth page, have them receive an ebook, lifestyle wellness. Okay. The Zyto scan. All right. Okay. So how about Zyto scan? I like that, Amanda. Okay, let's work with that because that actually, it is an offer, right? And it is also something, it's a place where you're going to want to educate someone, right? Okay, so essentially what we're going to do here is we are going to create a page about wellness scans, and we're going to educate on wellness scans, right? And then we are going to have a clear direction, call to action. What do we want them to do? We want them to schedule or to sign up for this, right? Because if you, let's just say, for instance, if you are offering Zyto, you're probably doing a scan through the virtual Zyto model, right? So you're not doing an in-person scan like with a Cradle. So we want them to sign up for it. That way you can set them up in Zyto and follow those steps on the back end, right? Okay, so let's take a look at some of these templates that we have to work with. There's a lot of great things that are already here. Let me actually click this one that says mission. I don't think I've really worked with this one before. Oh, this is nice. Okay, awesome. So we'll use this as our example. And there's a couple of things that I want to call to you guys' attention. Okay. Now, there is a term that you'll hear me say often. It's above the fold. And that is this section right here. And above the fold is a term that references, I don't know, the last time you guys went into a store and saw a folded newspaper, stack of newspapers for sale. It feels like the world is getting rid of those things. But the above the fold is what you see when you look at that newspaper on the counter, and it's ultimately usually something that causes you to pick up the newspaper and buy it, right? And so this section here is, sometimes it's also called a hero section. What we're doing here above the fold is we're being very clear about what's on this page and giving a compelling reason for them to take a step we want them to take. Now, our purpose of this page is to get somebody to sign up for a complimentary scan, right? So that means we're going to use this real estate right here to accomplish that. So the first thing we're going to do is address the copy here. I don't want to go too heavy into copywriting right now because obviously, like, this is about design, but this is where we'll say something to the effect of transform your, let's say, take your wellness into your own hands without all the guesswork. This is terrible copy, but work with me here. All right, so take your wellness into your hands without, we'll just say without the guesswork. And we will, do you see how, as I'm kind of hovering over, you can isolate the different parts of this section? Be mindful of when you're making modifications. Obviously, when you're changing your copy, you don't have to worry about this quite as much. But if I were to edit this entire section, I could, for instance, delete some of these spaces if I want to shrink this a little bit, right? Maybe I want to change the color of this button. I can do that right here, right? In a section like this, and this gets more to design, I would actually err on the side of putting a slightly bolder color here that contrasts with the background. I actually think this background is phenomenal. I like it a lot. But if we have a contrasting color, it's going to draw the eye to where we want them to go. And the whole purpose of design is to move someone's eye and their scrolling to the ultimate place where we want them to take action, right? So in this case, this is sign up for your complimentary wellness scan now. And of course here, that's going to go to the lead. We'll say, sign me up. Okay, Jolene has a question here. Is there a way to upload specific color into the color options for buttons? Yeah, absolutely. That's actually going to be over here. And this is like just a basic function of GetOiling. You're going to want to get into customizing your site. You're getting into your colors and fonts. That's where you can put in your logos and things like that. But on the colors and fonts, you can actually scroll down here and you have the ability to actually change your color. You can use a color picker, or if you have created a palette in Canva, for instance, you can change your hex codes. So you can actually set your buttons. This is a setup step that I highly recommend if you're going to be branding your website. One of the first things that you need to do is get your fonts in place that you've selected, and then get all of your colors in here and established. So we've got these here, and then definitely go through. And what I prefer to do is to just go ahead and change all of these to reflect your brand. So they're all some variation of the colors that fit in your palette. And then once you've done that, you can actually find them in a list right here that you can scroll through, right? So there's like that teal outline one, for instance, right? Okay. And Karen also says, I'm just starting out. I'm creating the page I want to be my welcome page, but would love to point people to the basic oil sheet created from my welcome page. Is that possible? Karen, a quick question for you. What is the basic, what's the sheet for the basic oils page? Is that something that's in PDF format? Is that something people would download? If you could let me know about that, then I think I can better answer your question. Okay. So let's get back into this. So what we're doing here is we've obviously started with a template, right? And the template has this great image in the background. Now, what if you actually want a different image? There is a section editor right here where you can make lots of different cool changes. One of which would be to change your background image. Now, I have a preference for a specific Canva preset, but it's not the only way to go. So for instance, this is a really great high resolution image. It looks just as great on mobile, the image does, as it does on tablet and also on desktop, right? So make sure that if you are going to use an image in the background of a section, that it is something that if blown up on a large screen, it's not going to be grainy, right? So let's go and take a look at, before we get too far into the other functions of the section background here, I want to actually go into Canva and show you how I like to create backgrounds for multiple sections of a website all in one place. So I'm going to go log into my Canva and show you guys what I like to do. And matter of fact, I think in my projects, I'm pretty sure I have, let's see, section backgrounds. Here we go. Yeah, I've got some, actually quite a few different ones. So here is page section backgrounds, where you can actually see in this particular case, I've gone through and made all of these colors basically the same. These would be used for different sections of the same page. And they're all sort of different textures, right? And they're all utilizing the same color palette. The first rule that I shared with you guys in the beginning of the call is that we want to focus on less is more, right? So we don't want to overwhelm with lots of different stuff. So think about using backgrounds like this for punctuations, right? You don't need to have an image in the background of every single section, but that doesn't mean that you can't utilize certain tricks to do cool stuff. So let's just say, for instance, we've got a section background that is maybe this solid pink color, but we want it to overlap and move into the section beneath it. Okay, so I've got this here. These are just elements that I've found in the element section. They're colored according to the palette, etc. I'm going to actually download maybe these first two, and I will show you how you can actually create a pretty cool design on your page that looks like they're scrolling over. I don't know the best way to put this. You'll see what I show you in just a second. So I'm going to go here to download, and I'm going to select the ones from this template that I want to use. So I'll use these first two. I'll click done, and I'll click download. Now I'm going to come back over here, and maybe I actually want, because I'm using pink. Pink is just, it's the color, it's what I want. So I'm going to go and add a background image from those pink ones that I just downloaded. Here we go. So there's this one. And I'm going to add it to this section. So you can see that it's actually uploaded here. I'm going to close out the section settings. If I add some padding, you'll actually be able to see that there's a lot more to this section. But here, let's look at the phone preview for this section. You can see that it actually shows the top and the bottom. And it's actually the text is kind of popping over top of it, which I think can look pretty cool, right? Depending on what you're trying to do. Now, it's obviously different on these different backgrounds. If you want to make sure that you're showing more of the image, perhaps, what you can do, number one, is you can make sure that you center the image, right? So this means that if we're showing this on desktop, we're probably going to have to add some padding, because all you can see is that little guy right there, right? And then of course on mobile, I think it's just going to show the whole thing, but on tablet, let's see what it looks like. Yeah, it's not going to show quite as much. You do have other options here to actually contain, and you see that pops over here on the left. That's not actually what we want. You can repeat it, or you can, so you've got different options here. I'm going to use cover, and I'm actually going to go in here and increase padding. Padding is space, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this section bigger. So we do that by adding padding to the section itself. You can also pad the content. So I'm going to add about 200, maybe 220 or so pixels of padding to the top and the bottom. All right. And I'm happy with that, but I have something in mind that I want to do. I'm actually going to move this down a bit, because I want to, in the section above, I'm actually going to remove this image. And so if we go to change background image and we go to none, I'm going to pick my background color from right here. And obviously we're going to need to change the color of our copy here so that we can read it. And we'll do that for now. But the reason why I wanted to show you this specifically, a section color, and then the second section actually has your image background, is that you have the ability to create a scrolling experience on a page where it feels like you don't just have those hard lines, right? So, you have the ability in your sections to create a background, right? And to have images on top of the background. And that's lovely, and it's clean, and it's fine. But what if you want a little bit more visual interest? This is one of my favorite tricks for doing that. And that is to have either an image in the background of a section like this one, that the bottom of the image terminates in a particular color. And then in the next section, maybe there's just part of that image that keeps that color going. So it actually looks, when you're scrolling, like you've got this big pink section that does this thing on the bottom, right? kind of neat, right? And there's so many ways that you can do this. So make sure as you are creating these designs, do you see how this is continuous? It actually looks kind of cool, right? Be sure that as you are creating these designs, that you are you're doing what I'm doing right now, which is coming up here and previewing what this would look like on different devices. Ideally, you want something, you know, for your ease and peace of mind, you want something that's just, you know, it's one thing, and you don't want to have to redesign another section. But if you are absolutely in love with how a section appears, but you don't love how it shows up on another section, you do have the ability to hide the sections that it appears on, make a duplicate of that section, and then alternate what it doesn't appear on, and then you can make those changes. So this would be the one for mobile. And I'm going to, in this particular case, I'm going to shrink the text size down a bit, right? So if I were to do that, obviously want to remove some of this space here. And then you can actually see, obviously, again, this isn't optimal, but you can see the difference here on the phone versus here, right? So you do have the ability to make those modifications to make your designs more mobile friendly. So so Jolene, to your comment here about giving guidelines to create optimization for mobile versus desktop, depending on how you've set up a section, it's going to look different on one versus the other. So I would just as a general rule, design the page you want, and then again, making sure that you're checking it along the way. And then where it needs to change for mobile, for instance, then you just do what I shared with you here, which is to swap things out. Generally speaking, on mobile, depending on how you've oriented a piece of content, it may not show up the way that you want it to in the same way that it would on desktop, for instance. So let's actually get into kind of what that can look like. So we've just been playing around with the content and with the section editor. We've talked about our background color, about images, and then of course you have padding to create space. So and then you can modify where things are visible. Now, what if you want a section to stand out, but you want it to be subtle? You can actually take a section here. So I'm actually clicking here. Let me get out of this real quick. I want this section here to actually have a shadow, and I want it to stand out, right? So we're going to, so the section shadow is this black color, and we can actually make it pop out just like that. So it's like, it's a more subtle way. Instead of introducing a ton of color, you can actually create that sort of subtle eye-catching, you know, draw the eye to a feature right here. Now, what if you don't want to be so horizontal and linear in how you are designing? To do really cool stuff and have, you know, people's eye draw down the page without them looking at clearly section, right? There's this horizontally oriented stack of sections, creating something that feels like a single page that's more dynamic. You could cause individual elements to animate, to have a background for themselves, or even to move them or give them a shadow. And the way that we do that is by editing our element styles. So I've clicked this magic wand, which is for editing the element styles, and I'm going to go and try to highlight, here we go, this entire section, but it's not the entire, so the entire section is this pencil, right? So that's where you actually saw me increasing the blur intensity across the whole thing. But I want to edit just this section that has the button and the copy. So I'm going to click it, and I am still down here at shadow. It actually remembered, which is kind of cool. And I'm going to give it a shadow. Right? So the opacity, I'm going to increase just a little bit, and I'm going to, oops, I don't want to blur that itself. I want to, where did it go? So you can position a shadow here. Actually, here's what I'm going to do instead. First thing, let's give this section here a background. All right, so I'm giving the background opacity. It is white, right? And I think it might help as well if this section background had a different color. So you might see sort of the more subtle difference that we're going for here. So I'm going to give it this one. So you can actually cause the section here to kind of pop, right? And so what we'll do is first we want to increase the padding. You see how close the text is up there to the top. So let's give a little bit to actually go back to our section, highlight the whole thing, and then let's give it some padding. So you see how we are now moving it down and then creating some padding on the bottom. So that looks more visually balanced, right? But we can actually do a lot of really cool stuff within the individual elements. And so I want to encourage you to play around with using columns, so like multi-column sections. We'll get into what the column editor looks like here in just a second. But you can, for specific elements, you can give them like a shadow, like a blur background. You can cause it to spread wider. You can, increase where it goes up and down. So here you go. Here you can actually see the shadow of this section right here. So if we were to do it and it was just the text, like it wasn't, it was literally blurring the text. But let's take this background color back to nothing and or back to white, and you can actually see that we've created a cool little highlight there. Now, let's talk really quickly about, yeah, it is 3D, 100%. So there's a 3D, and this is actually something, if you guys are ever looking for someone to do designs for you, Tiffany incorporates this into a lot of her designs, and they're absolutely gorgeous. They're very eye-catching without being busy, right? And so using shadows on your elements is a big way that you can get that effect without getting coloring book, right? without having your website look like a color by numbers project, right? So let's take a quick look at how we can incorporate images. Maybe you have a very specific idea in mind and you want to incorporate an image, maybe one of, this wellness scan, right? Like we want to, encourage people to take this, to take this opportunity to get this Zyto scan with you. So we want to, obviously your copy would not look like this, and I'm going to delete this section here. We want to maybe insert a section where we can include a video, right? And we want that video to be maybe the Zyto, like the video about Zyto scans. So when you want to add a new section, take into account what the function of that section is going to be. So as an example, if we want to draw their eye to a video so that they can watch and learn, I'm probably going to want to just have a single column, right? Where there's not really anything else that needs to go here. So we're going to go back over to our content, because this is how you would actually insert your video. I'm going to delete my text here. I want to center it. And then I can actually go and find my Zyto video. Let's pretend that we actually have one, and we can insert it right here. Okay. So when we've got that, it's here. You could also give this a shadow, right? Which is pretty cool. So you want to make sure that you are really framing the place where you want their eye to be drawn. I would encourage you to, if it's a very important thing that they need to see, that you don't have any other competing stuff in its section. So having a busy background is not going to be helpful here. If you really want to have some amount of color, then you could use a trick like I did for this section here. right? Where you're kind of bleeding from one color into the next section using something subtle. So you could do something like that, and that does create, again, that kind of 3D effect. So let's actually see what that would look like if we were to take that one that I created. There we go. So you can actually see that it's, it's actually showing up over something. I feel like this is just a touch too much. I want to move it a bit. So I want to orient the image just a little bit higher, right? But that is really the furthest extent of where I would go in a, getting someone to review strategic information. And then of course, make sure that that color, if you're using this trick, is an extension of some piece of the section above it, because then it's going to look, it's going to look nice. It's going to look on purpose. Now, what about, where you want to have maybe a photo? In this case, it could be a photo of you. This could be an about me section. It's perfectly fine way to look at this. And this is great. If you are setting up your about me section and it looks like this, there's really nothing wrong with it. But what if you wanted to really kind of make it pop? Well, there's a couple of things that you can do here, including using the shadows to create dimension, and sort of, well, there's just a lot you can do. All right. So where you have a photo of something and there are several elements going on, right? So in this example, we've got a picture of a girl who's smiling, and then we've got a nice leafy background. Well, it would be absolutely ideal if that picture took up this entire section. Well, it doesn't. We can create something that is kind of close. All right. So let me show you what we're going to do. And this is going to work for you if you are, let me download this image. If you have Canva Pro, we're going to use a Canva Pro feature here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create an individual image, right? So we're just going to create a design. This design, I'm going to, let me actually look at this picture of her. I think we could get away with something that is relatively square. So I'm going to go with a logo is a preset that I love. It's 500 by 500 pixels. It may be better to use a higher resolution because this is going to be used the way that I'm about to show you. But let's just play around with this and see what we can do. So it's in my downloads. All right, so here's the image. And I'm going to zoom in just a bit so you guys can see what I'm doing. Go to edit photo. And click background remover. Now, once we've done that, what I want to do is zoom out just a bit. And I want to attach her to the bottom of it and stretch it out as big as I can make it go to where it still fits. So it looks like we need to, I'm going to shrink it just a little bit. And I'm going to connect it here to the bottom. Okay. So, and I wouldn't actually recommend this as the best photo to use on a page. It's good for an about section, but there are better ways to go about this with better images of you. But if you wanted to do this, just want to make sure you understand how to do this. We're going to go to share. We're going to download with a transparent background. There we go. And let's come back over here. And we're going to swap this for that one with a transparent background. All right. And we're going to play around with this. Don't worry, we're not quite done yet. But we're going to also, in Canva, let's go ahead and use our section backgrounds that we were just recently playing around with. And let's add a nature background. So I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to delete these other elements. And let's go search for forest. And then we would find something that is relatively believable, set it as the image background. I actually like that quite a lot. Let's download this one. And basically what I'm showing you how to do here, you guys, is to recreate a setting for an entire section so that it's adding you, but it's giving the whole section a cohesive design, because it doesn't look quite as nice to say have that image as the background of your section and then have, you know, an image on top of it that has a competing background. So if we were to change this background image of this section, and don't forget, you can use the Canva button. Here we go. There's that image section. Or sorry, that's the image that I just created for this section. It is still downloading. And once it is ready, we'll be able to apply it to the whole background, which is pretty cool. So we could do that, right? And then we want to adjust the padding of the section so that she's at the very bottom of it, right? So it actually looks like her in a photo. So what we would do in this instance is we are still in the section editor. I'm going to remove the bottom padding and she's now basically at the bottom of the section. So that is something that you could do. Another way that you could kind of make her pop out and create dimensionality would be to remove the image. So don't have a background here. And then you could actually, in this editor here with the element style, you can actually create a shadow for her. So we'll increase the opacity and we will increase the intensity, right? And so you have the ability to do that as well. But you do want to make sure that you have totally removed the background. And yeah, and make sure it's a really good photo. You'll see on some of the sites that like Jessica or Tiffany design, they'll use that kind of a feature quite often, where there's a really nice photo of you that has the background removed, and then there's shadow elements that again give that really great sort of pop off the page. Adrian asked, is there a way to set up page sections so it works evenly across all devices rather than having to duplicate sections? So we have done some training in the past focusing on mobile or designing for mobile. Essentially what you want to do is just as you are designing, make sure that you are using the previews. And if it looks good on all of them, then you're good to go, right? You can set your sections up so it works on all devices, absolutely. But in the case where something just isn't working out on mobile the way that you want it to, you have a very clear idea of how you want it to work on desktop, and you don't want that to impact on mobile, the view on mobile, then you are going to want to create a separate section. So just as an example, if you want something to show up with the with two sections like this side by side on desktop, you might not love how it looks on mobile. So let's actually take a quick look at this. So on mobile, if we scroll down, this is a little strange, but we actually have a cool thing called the column editor, where you could, if you wanted to make this work on both, where we can swap these columns, right? So here's a column. We are going to move it. We could even increase the size of one if we want this one to be a little smaller and this one to be a little larger. We could do that as well. But this is still going to be how it looks on desktop. But if we get into mobile, the picture is now underneath, right? So this is, obviously the content is more important than the photo. And that's what that would look like. So it just depends on how you're wanting to set that up. So getting back into this as well, where we're talking about the columns, I'm a big fan of using the column editor for creating mobile responsiveness and also just making things look nicer. You have a lot to consider, obviously, when you are creating designs, but remember that the philosophy is that you are starting with a clear intention. You know where you want them to go, and you are drawing the eye in that direction. So if in this case, if the strategy here is to create a Zytoscan page, we're going to put a clear call to action at the front, because if somebody came here hearing they could sign up for a Zytoscan, we're going to put this right here. So there is no question, they can head straight to where we want them to go. But if we are strategically wanting to move them toward making a decision, and in order to make the decision, they have to watch a video, then in that case, we would want to use elements that draw the eye toward where the video is. So I'll put the video right here, which was going to make a lot more sense than this financial copy. We'll put our video right here. And because again, there's a psychology of scrolling. So it's pink and it keeps going, and ooh, it stops right here. Do you see how your eye immediately jumps to the video? That's our goal, right? So if our goal is, if they're ready, sign them up, put that above the fold, have nothing that visually competes with this, but then use elements that draw their eye to the things that they need to see in order to move forward. So the next step here would not be an about me section, obviously. It might be a little bit more information about Zytoscans, or maybe this might be a testimonial from somebody who has done a scan, right? But this section, I actually designed like this. I would not set this up for desktop. I would actually not make this visible. I would not make this visible on these. I would make a copy and I would move those columns back. And when I show you what this looks like, I think you're going to understand what I'm getting at, because you have elements on the page that can help to draw the eye toward what people need to see and do. So if we are scrolling, oh, oops, I forgot to change this. So this one is going to be mobile only, and this is going to be for everything else. So if we look, as we're scrolling, we're drawing our eye to the video if they weren't ready to do this. And as we continue going, do you see how her body is pointing toward this button? This kind of stuff matters. It is slight and it's subliminal, but it matters. You also see that there's an arrow here, which is, it's cool design, looks nice. It would look even cooler if it was an arrow here that was maybe moved all the way over to the side of the page, and then there was an entire background, right, that the arrow was maybe on top of. That would be optimal. But you're using the elements on the page to point to the place that you want them to go. But if we are looking at, and this actually looks fine, we'll definitely want to change that so that it is not on tablet. So this will be mobile and tablet. There we go. Yeah. So, I mean, you want her on the bottom, right? Because the words are more important. So if you're on a vertically oriented device, this is the better choice. But on desktop, you've got this sort of subtle point toward what's happening here, right? Okay, so I know it's a lot. And we definitely still have time to get into more. If you guys have any specific questions about this, then we can definitely get into that as well. And then I want to get into your question here, Karen, as well, about the basic oils. And if you're okay with it, let me know in the chat if you're okay with coming out to chat, and then we can I'll unmute you and we can talk. Let me see, Jolene, you wanted to see where the column editor is. That's actually this one right here up at the top of the page. So you've got your content editor, right? And this is where you would actually click. This is the A with the little cursor bar. You would click this to actually go in and change the words or edit your buttons, etc. The element styles are where you're going to do cool things like animate. So I want this one to fade in down, and I want to delay it by 0.1 seconds. And I'm in the wrong section for that. That's going to be on, here we go. right? Or actually, I want to fade in up. That would look cooler because then she's going to be creeping up from the bottom. So we'll fade in up, and you can actually play with those sections and create animation. Whoop, there she is, right? And this is another thing that I want to get into, and I'll get into that here in just a second. So this is the element editor. So elements are the things you can highlight on the page. You can modify them manually. So in this particular case, if we want to give this a background color, like you can have just that one, right? If you wanted to. And so you could edit all of these differently, and you could also animate them differently. So this can arrive a 0.1 second before this one, and they can animate in all kinds of different ways. But then you have the column editor, and the column editor is going to work for you in a couple of different cool ways. You actually have the ability to, using the column editor, first note that you can take up to 12 spaces. You're going to have to, if your numbers here add up to 12, you're going to have to decrease the size of one of them in order to do what I'm about to show you. But maybe I want to duplicate this section and I want to move it over. Right? That's something that you can do. But just make sure that your numbers, of course, all add up to 12. So you actually have the ability to copy, to delete, to change size if you really want the image to be much bigger or smaller. So maybe I want these columns to be, smaller, and then I want this one bigger. You have the ability to do that with a column editor as well, which is really cool. Now, final thing I wanted to get into is the smart use of animations. This is a great way, again, to highlight your copy, which the copy that's on your page is 1 million times more important than the pretty stuff. It's a great way to draw the eye where you want it to go without creating distraction or busyness, right? And so what you're going to do is use the element editor, right? That's the one right here in the middle. And I want to just have this button animate. And I want it to, let's look at our options here. There's a lot of really cool stuff that it can do. We're going to wobble it, and we're going to delay that for just really, really brief delay. All right, so let's take a look. Wobble, there it is. Make sure, and this is why actually I can't recommend enough that if you are designing for mobile, design the whole page first, right? Design the whole page that you know that you want first, because if you have done that and you decide, you know what, I'm in love with this section, but this font is just too big for mobile, then at that point, you have the wobble is already here. You don't have to go and try to add new animations and give yourself a ton of extra work. All right. Okay, Karen, I'm going to bring you out to chat, and we'll talk about what you are trying to do with your pages. So give me just a second. Hi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. All right. So can you tell me a little bit about what we are trying to do?
Absolutely. So, yeah, my original question wasn't real clear. So I'm just getting started, and I see that the default welcome page is the basic oils page. What I've done is I've created a new page that I want to be my welcome page, but I would love to offer that basic oils link from my welcome page back to oils, so that when the user experiences that they come to my website, it's not just immediately oils. They can kind of see my whole brand, or all of the things that I do and offer, and then go to the oils page if that's what they're looking for. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there is a free template that I want to encourage you to get, because it actually does that, and you can design it to fit your branding. And it actually will link to, this one's been modified, but it'll actually link to all of those built-in pages. So this one, if you click the button, it'll actually take you to the basic oils page, and it's already done. But they could also go to the body systems page or the dietary oils page or the pets page or the kids page or whatever, right? So you actually have all of those options built into one page. So that's the easy button is to, it's in the Brand My Business workshop, which if you go to the Success Academy, you can go to resources and courses, and it is right here. And that is a template. It's called YYL. Can't recommend it enough because it automatically, you don't even have to know how to code it. It'll automatically point to your to those built-in themes. Now, the other way that you could do this, that's fairly simple, is to create a leg builder link.
Actually, we can't see your screen.
Sorry about that, you guys. Okay, so thank you. So let me show you real quick. In the Success Academy, you go to online courses and resources, and it's the Brand My Business workshop. The page that I'm referring to is this one right here, where you can actually get this template. And if we scroll down here, the basic oils is there. The body systems is there. So you can actually link a lot of these different pages from your from one page, and it's already done for you. So that's recommendation number one, is to definitely grab that template because it's free and you can use it. But the other thing that you could do is grab a leg builder link. So what we would do here is create a link. And if you leave this blank, it's going to put in your automatic, like what you already have in the system. But if you are, this is obviously there's a separate training on this, but if you are maybe trying to build a particular leg of your business, you can modify this information too. But we're going to call this one Body Systems, and we'll pick that website theme. And then when we create the link and we go find it, that Body Systems link, then we can link that like in a button or whatever. Right. So here, this one right here. So if we go to copy this one right here, then you could go into your page and you can, link it in the button, on your home page or however you have that set up. Does that make sense?
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, super helpful.
Yeah, good. Okay,
Thank
great.
you so much.
Sure thing. Sure thing. Thanks for coming out. Awesome. Glad we got that figured out. Thank you guys for catching me there on the screen share. Let's see. Any other questions before we get going? Or do you have any ideas that you might now pursue for creating and improving your pages, you guys? What does that look like for you? Again, remember that you want to start with your palette, right? And we do have brand training. That little course that I recommended to Karen just a minute ago is something that I recommend that you all take care of as well. Get into that and take advantage of what's there for you. Start with a base palette. If it is very colorful, just remember that you're going to want to give some breathing room between the bright spaces. And you can actually use really vibrant colors and interesting designs. Just make sure that they aren't detracting from the important stuff, which is what the page is saying, right? If they aren't able to follow what the page is saying, then while we may be doing something fun, if you find it fun, we're not necessarily doing something effective. So really work on that, build the page that you want first before trying to fool around with mobile, especially if you have moved your elements around and animated them just like you want them. And then once you've got that page, you can obviously check what it's looking like on the different device settings, and then make your changes from there to make those mobile responsive sections. So awesome. I'm glad this is helpful for you guys. A lot of tips here to work with. There's certainly more where this came from. If you have a specific request, maybe a type of thing that you're trying to do in particular, I see a need for what I've shared today when you maybe have like images over photos that you want to put into, text over images in photos that you want to put onto your page, right? If you can follow that kind of rule of isolating an element, like I did, taking that girl out of the leafy background, right? Creating, if you really want, a new whole leafy background that covers the entire section, and then inserting her onto it, right? That would be, you know, an example of something that you could do. If you have images, for instance, and this is going to be true if you are working with the Young Living products, gift with purchase, mentioning stuff like that on your pages, remove the background from those images, right? Remove the background from those images so that they are able to work more effectively with your existing design and the background colors and things like that. It's going to look a lot nicer and more professional. So isolating those elements and just using things like color and design sparingly so that we're not overwhelming the page. So thank you guys for your time. We'll be back here same time next week. And until then, we're in our Facebook group. Make sure that you've joined us there if you haven't already. And we look forward to seeing you next Thursday, same time. Take care, everybody.